Hey, how's it going there, folks? Welcome back here to a Thursday morning, about 11:53 a.m. here, California time, Thursday, May 2nd, 2024. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe shows looks like a 1.3 here across the California area. Notice this stacking of earthquake activity up here in the Aleutian Trench. Got a pretty decent earthquake swarm occurring in this area. Yesterday and today, we've seen about 14 earthquakes or so in this area. Really not noticing any main quake out here yet in terms of the main magnitude. Had quite a few fives here yesterday, and then just after midnight, some more fives. The latest, somewhat larger one is a 4.7 in this mix of earthquake activity occurring into the subduction zone here of the Aleutian Trench. Looks like anywhere between 10 and 30 kilometers or so. Not associated with volcanic activity, but this looks like some buildup going on here across the plate boundary itself, indicative of maybe some larger scale movement about ready to take place in that area. Again, there really hasn't been any main quake in that sequence of earthquakes. If you want to call the 5.5 a main quake, these aftershocks here do not match up for a 5.5. This looks like something maybe a bunch of foreshocks here in this area. So we'll continue to keep an eye on this area of the Aleutian Trench for some larger movement over here across the Curl Kamchatka earlier this morning as well. Seen a 4.4. This is a fairly well locked and built up zone in terms of strain and accumulated slip rate out here. Looking at this thing popping off a big one here soon, I'm sure. It's been a little while since we've seen any large scale movement. I'm talking above a 7 here in this area. Out here in the Northern California area and off the coast here, this earthquake from yesterday, 3.8, way off into the Gorda Ridges. This is a spreading seafloor center here. Notice the new land being created out there across the oceanic floor. That should add some further activity out here. It doesn't look like we've kicked that up overnight. So we'll continue to watch that. Northern California specifically here. Handful of smaller quakes around the Clear Lake volcanic field. Very typical here for that region. There's quite a few hydrothermal plants there in that region that take advantage of the heated areas below to create energy. At 3:33 in the morning, goodness, there's 333 always popping up here. 2.4 earthquake in the Lake Almanor area. Very shallow earthquake. It looks like that's on that newly discovered fault system here that runs through the lake area. Or underneath the lake area, I should say. Overall seismic activity here in this region has been somewhat elevated. Back a couple months back here, they had actually it's been a year or so. I think they had about 5.7 here in this area. Been a little while, but we've been seeing these little earthquake sequences come and go. A couple new swarms occurring south of the area. Overall, that's a sign of regional stress out here against the plate boundary and a ways away from the plate boundary here in Northern California. So we'll continue to watch that and keep an eye on things here. Southern Cal, or at least, what's this? I don't want to state Northern California. This is more or less like Central California here. 2.4, a couple other smaller quakes there from yesterday. We did have another 1.4 along the San Andreas Fault. This is the creeping section of the San Andreas Fault here. Instead of like the other areas down south or up north here along the plate boundary, this area doesn't build up a whole lot of strain. It just kind of creeps along here with periodic earthquakes and slip compared to areas down south and up north here where strain builds tension and then releases in a large earthquake. But we can get some, I think we're somewhat overdue for at least a 6-pointer down here. It seems to happen every 20 to 24 years or so, and it's been about that since the last 6-pointer struck on that area of the plate boundary. Of course, you got to worry about the San Andreas Fault down here as well. This one's built up 300 and something years of strain since the last full rupture here of the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, capable of producing an 8.1 magnitude earthquake. Now, yesterday we did see things stirring up out here in the Corona area of California. This is up into the mountain range here of the Santa Ana Mountains, most likely associated with the Elsinore Fault or a segment of it. That's You can see one branch of it right here, but I believe there's a couple different segments here that run through here. It's not on the San Andreas Fault. That sits over here, much further to the east. But yeah, overnight, looks like we've seen a handful of smaller quakes in there as well. See, in this sequence here, we see a 4.1 followed by many more smaller earthquakes, indicating a sequence of aftershocks compared to like we're seeing up in Alaska, how it's got a bunch of fives and really no main quake to distinguish, which one is the main quake. So continue to watch this area. Aftershock sequence there continue following that 4.1 from yesterday. Across the San Andreas Fault here, outside of the Desert Hot Springs, got a small amount of earthquake activity here on the San Andreas Fault, specifically here, the southern branch. Nothing big, just a couple smaller earthquakes there in the one range for now. And further down south here, a couple different segments of the San Jacinto Fault Zone showing some earthquake activity. Salton Sea, look at this earthquake here, a little 0.7 from yesterday, just off the southern branch here of the San Andreas Fault. We'll continue to watch that. Any type of swarming that I see within a couple miles of the plate boundary is noteworthy to watch because of the potential that exists out here in terms of a large-scale movement. A little bit of activity throughout Nevada, southern Nevada, and up into Utah. See what we got up here at Yellowstone. Nothing showing up there across the Yellowstone map, but let's just double check. And look at these four. These look like 4 earthquakes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, but those are distant earthquakes. Let me bring this up here. I'm guessing those are from, let's see, what do we have overnight for as the largest magnitude? 5.9 yesterday. Oh, that's picking up the 5-pointers there, literally back to back of each other within a short amount of time in Alaska. That's what these are. So a couple signatures there from the Alaska earthquake showing up on a couple seismograph stations here. I know Alaska and Yellowstone has a considerable distance from each other, but when you get up in the 5 range, they can be picked up across these stations that are very sensitive. Even the promontory picked up those 4 earthquakes here. And again, those are associated with these quakes up here, these 5-pointers that occurred right here, literally within a short time of each other. See? Roughly about 20 minutes of each other. We've seen 4 5-pointers and a 4.5. So this area definitely needs to be watched up here today. But as far as local seismic activity here at Yellowstone, not a whole lot going on. I'm not really seeing any local spikes there across the area. Maybe one here, but that's about it. Really nothing of concern out there across Yellowstone National Park for now. Out in Texas area, outside of the San Antonio region, a couple earthquakes there from yesterday. Looks like we did have another 3.4 earlier this morning. Excuse me. Outside of the Falls City area of Texas. Quite a few oil fields out here, if I remember right. And was just out here a short time ago, within the last week or so. Trying to adjust back to the California air after being out and about there for 10 days out on the road. 3.4 out here in the oil fields, it looks like. Quite a few oil pumping pads, as noted on the satellite map. Wastewater disposal ponds in there as well. And let's see, I believe, there's another 1.8 within that same region. We've been watching a little migration here across Texas recently. Let's pull up the last 7 days of activity. Notice this area around Pecos, Texas. That's always got earthquake activity. There's a lot of oil fields out there. And, a lot of people look at the fault systems out here. And there is quite a few older fault systems. But all these pumping operations out here, these gas wells and whatnot, can trigger these earthquakes and activate those older fault systems. And it looks like it's migrating here further inland, deeper into Texas. Noticing that here away from the Pecos, Texas area in a kind of a fashion of a left to right here. Also around Dallas-Fort Worth, we've seen some movement earlier yesterday morning as well out in those oil fields. So the pressure is increasing out here against the North American continent, North American plate, but inland, inside of the continent itself, away from the plate boundary. So definitely keep an eye on this because we're seeing an increasing migration of earthquake movement around the region. Oklahoma City in there getting some as well. Of course, the new Madrid seismic zone right up here, and that's a little concerning because that's where a big one can take place here. We're talking 1811, 1812 was the last big series of earthquakes here. 200 and something years has passed now since that has taken place. So what happens in 200 years? Well, we get slip rate, a lot of accumulated strain, rebuilding for the next big one. 4.0 from yesterday there off the Buff Bay, Jamaica area. Looks like we did see another earthquake just after midnight within that region. Well, south here, but within the Caribbean plate, southern end, in the Columbia area. 35 kilometers deep for that 4.3. Columbia plate here, or the Caribbean plate here, has been squeezed and pushed around here recently. Definitely noticed that in the last couple days of earthquake activity around the Middle American Trench and all around this plate boundary. Looks like we may be looking at something bigger occurring here within this region soon as well. Far as the South America area goes, looks like a handful of smaller quakes down here, and also a, let's see, I've seen a 4-pointer, 5.1, there we go, from yesterday as well. Some older movement quakes along the Peru-Chile Trench. The South Sandwich Islands area, a couple earthquakes from late last night and after midnight my time as well, mainly confined here to the northern segment of the South Sandwich Trench area. Last 7 days of activity does show this region of some interest here because of the increasing magnitudes here in that area. Now, the last 30 days of activity kind of shows a broader region. I mean, it's expected when one area here sees some adjustment that other areas would fill in as well. It's a very small subduction zone and very noticeable when you follow these earthquake patterns here across the plate boundary. It does look like maybe we'll see some activity further here in the days ahead across that region. Quite active. The Atlantic Ocean, fairly quiet, nothing going on out there, at least according to the USGS, aside from way down south here. There's all our activity in Alaska. Let's go out to the big island of Hawaii, see what's going on out here today. Still looking at earthquake activity around the upper east rift zone. Of course, we've been watching this here for the last few days, almost the last week or so. We've seen a decent amount of earthquake activity out here, mainly confined to this region. Now, this is not all of the earthquakes that have happened here. The USGS has stated they've been having earthquakes between 300 and 400 in a 24-hour period for the past few days. So this map only showing 430 in the last week. So we know that things are not being added on here in terms of the correct multitude of quakes. But we got a good idea here what's going on with the magma movement here in this area. I want to go over and check out the latest update here from the USGS in terms of the volcano activity there. Still currently sitting at a yellow. This is the latest update here. Let's double check and see what they have to say. Yellow and advisory. The Kilauea volcano is currently not erupting, but elevated seismicity beneath the upper east rift zone and caldera south of the crater region that began back on the April 27th timeframe continues to this date. An increase in earthquake activity began just after midnight back on that date beneath the upper east rift zone and beneath the south region here of the caldera. Now, over the past few days or so, we've seen a large number of earthquakes here. As they mentioned about the 270 earthquakes in the area in the past 24 hours. It does look like increased earthquake activity there. About 12 to 15 earthquakes per hour, mostly on the southeast side of the crater region. Depths there across the area remain concentrated between 1.2 to 1.9 kilometers deep. So that's indicative right there of some further push of magma into the region. Expected to probably see the deformation charts rise here pretty sharply soon. As their latest update goes this morning, though, ground deformation continues with ongoing uplift at the summit and south of the caldera into the southwest rift zone. The tilt signal here at this area turned over to an inflation as part of a deflation inflation event that began back on April 29th. So it does look like things are continuing. Their analysis states that at this time it is not possible to say with certainty if this increase in activity will lead to an intrusion or eruption. But it kind of makes sense, right? Or simply continue as seismic unrest at depth. I'm leaning more towards an eruption here soon in the area. Let's go check out the deformation charts here that they're speaking of. See what's going on. There we go. There's our sharp rise in inflation. That's actually a pretty significant event right there. Much higher than the previous inflation events over the past week. And long-term models here, this is the last 30 days showing inflation there at the summit region. Continued inflation, and we're definitely up there around the highest level observed across the summit region since 2018. So obviously, you know, what's creating rising land? Well, magma below the surface. It's not a subduction zone area. It's not a plate boundary. This is a hot spot region, and magma is coming into the area below. So eventually we're going to see a return of the eruption process here across the area of Kilauea Volcano. Just a matter of time. A look at the seismograph stations here. Let me see what we got. I'm going to bring up one of these right here, if I can see it. There we go. Yeah, past 12 hours, past 6 hours. Goodness, look at that. Quite a bit of earthquake activity, more so here in the last 10 hours or so. It looks like got some sharp uptick. And, of course, that's where they mentioned the 10 to 12 earthquakes per hour, a little slight uptick compared to yesterday's time frame. So, you know, we got to watch that. Things are getting quite active out here across that area. All right, further out and about, see what we got here across the plate boundary of the rest of the world here. A couple earthquakes today, it looks like, around Vanuatu. Seen a 4.8. The latest one in this area looks to be a 4.2, fairly deep underneath the Java Sea area. This is a major subduction zone right here, 254 kilometers deep for that 4-pointer that kicked off here a few hours ago. And looks like the EMSC is reporting that as a 3.7. USGS has that as a 4.2, a little bit larger. Either way, deeper activity triggering underneath this region today. New Zealand, not a whole lot showing up here on the globe for now. Looks like a 3.1 just off the North Island area. That does look like it's associated with the northern edge here of the Hikurangi subduction zone. All right, what else we got? Space weather activity. We're right here from solarham.com is the site. We did see some observed G3s. Well, let's see what we got here. Yeah, G3 class storming, it looks like, almost kicked up here. Still continuing right now across the far side. I shouldn't say the far side of the Earth. The dark side of the Earth for now, where people are sleeping, and it's nighttime over there across this area. And parts of Europe and other areas out here, it looks like, Iceland included, Greenland. All these areas probably have a decent chance right now of seeing some auroras. We got the KP index up there around the 6 level, maybe up into the 7 registered right here on one of these monitoring stations. So a decent amount of auroras kicking in. Now, I guess they were forecasting that, right? I remember I got caught up last night with some stuff here. Kids were sick, so we had to take care of them. I didn't get a chance to do an update last night, so didn't get a chance to cover the space weather activity. Let me see here. I think we were supposed to get some type of glancing blow from a CME here recently. That kicked off a couple days ago. Earth in the green. There's that CME activity. I thought it was going to arrive a little bit later, but looks like, yeah, that's about right. That's why we're seeing that right now. Not a huge CME, but definitely looks like it hit us head on there because of the elevated space weather conditions right now and the chances of auroras. Now, whether this lasts into the evening or not, we'll have to keep an eye on it, at least for us here on the North American side of the Earth. but it looks like it could. Things are still quite active here in this area. Of course, Iceland, yeah, it is daytime over there right now, huh? Let's go check out the live from Ice. Well, yeah, let's see here real quick. Live from Iceland. Just want to see here real quick and see what we got. Definitely still light out, it looks like. So they're going to have to wait a little bit before any visible auroras. But as far as the activity here across the region of Iceland, still looks like one ongoing vent. Earthquake activity here in the area. Let's see if I can find it right here. See if anything else has changed here. Looks like about 56 earthquakes in the last 12 hours. Some migration of the earthquakes here across this rift zone south of our ongoing eruption. Here's Grindvik, the ongoing eruption occurring roughly within this area of one crater. But we're noticing an increasing activity event here across the area. So with the ongoing inflation there, even with a eruption going on right now, and further earthquake activity in the rift zones, that could be a key indicator there of maybe some further push of magma into the area below. Something we got to watch here pretty closely. All right, let me double check the, oops, it went back to the wrong Solar Ham site. It's now solarham.com, not solarham.net. Sometimes I got to delete that bookmark. So anyway, once it does get dark out here, hopefully we'll be able to see some roars out there across the higher latitude regions, maybe down into the mid if it continues there around the G3 class storming that's being observed right now. As far as any active sunspot regions, well, let's take a look here at the area of the Earth-facing side of the sun. One active region now departing the western limb. We are left with, look at this area, definitely ramping up here all of a sudden. Notice quite a bit of dark-colored cores separated here, but there is an individual complex core right here that needs some watching because I think we got some further flaring potential here from that area. Also a couple newer regions coming around the eastern limb we'll have to watch as well. Overall threat right now shows a 10% chance for X-flare proton event up there as well at about 10%, M-flare at 55%, and C-flare activity around 99% chance or so. Here's our popcorn unstableness in terms of flaring. I kind of look for that when things start getting active. A lot of sharp spikiness going on here on the chart. A lot of C-flare activity, but again, there's always a chance of some stronger flaring. Definitely keep an eye on that. Storm Prediction Center out here today. Got a little enhanced risk area across portions of west central Texas area, it looks like. Another chance for tornado activity as well within the 5 and 2% zone. So just a heads up around Abilene, Sweetwater area of Texas. I was just out here last week. Stayed there at Sweetwater. Some wind and hail out there as well. Looks like some big-time hail threats. We managed to dodge all the hailstorms, luckily, while we were out there. There is some concern here of some severe weather as we head into early next week. The Storm Prediction Center already has a somewhat of an outlook put out here for this area, roughly within the same region as that area that seen that tornado outbreak here last week. This is for Monday. 15% chance for some severe weather already. Going to have to watch this pretty closely here. They're talking about things taking shape here in terms of that typical dry line setup out here that gets all these storms firing up and the severe weather going. So we'll cover this as we get a little bit closer to that date. Here's the numerical models. As we put this into motion here, we got a decent system coming in here to the west coast. This is going to be the troublemaker here for this area on Monday. This is the weekend here. Got rain coming into California, snow, maybe some thunderstorms out here as well. I'll look forward to that. And come Monday, here's our low pressure system works its way further to the east, creating that severe weather potential out here across the plain states as we head Monday into Tuesday. So definitely got to watch that. Definitely quite active for now. After that, things appear to be, as far as just general thunderstorm activity active, but I'm not really seeing any major pattern up here that would be indicative of another severe weather event after this coming Monday's event. So hopefully things will calm down. I know these guys have been dealing with a lot of severe weather and tornadoes recently, and that's unfortunate, but it is that time of year. This region does see quite a bit of tornado activity in the month of April and May. All right, folks, I'm out of here. Have yourself a good day. These seismograph stations here look pretty quiet for now. A little spike here on hot caves. We'll continue to watch certain areas up here, folks. The Alaska region definitely looks like some foreshock activity up here. We'll see if this kicks back up or not. And then, of course, the Kilauea volcano. Increasing activity at the areas deep below. Not super deep, but really not at the subsurface level either. It's just a little ways down there, and that tells me that we're getting a further push of magma into the system below, and we'll start to notice a little bit more increasing earthquake activity and more inflation prior to any eruptive activity out here. All right, folks, have a good one. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later tonight. Going to go out and enjoy the day. It's supposed to be about 85 degrees today, so have a good one.